おはようございます皆さん。今日はスパイベットのビデオ撮りたいと思います。行こう。
Welcome to the Hookup Tackle. The Hookup Tackle is the world's largest showcase of Megabass products, featuring baits and colors not found at any other dealer. The Hookup also offers a wide display of OSP, Evergreen, Depths, Lucky Craft, Jackal, and many more. The Hookup Tackle is owned and operated by family, is staffed by guides and verified tackle nerds who love helping anglers elevate their craft. If you're in the Phoenix area, we'd love to have you stop by our showroom and check out the wonderful world of Megabass and the Hookup for yourself. If you shop online, there are almost 10,000 SKUs of Megabass products alone, with hundreds of other companies and new products being added daily. So next time you're looking for that hard to find bait, that color your fish have never seen before, or maybe you just want to elevate your game, look at thehookuptackle.com.
What's up guys? Jeff here from the Hookup Tackle. Today we are going to be talking about one of my favorite little finesse style baits, and that is the Duo Realis Spinbait. And we're going to be talking about the technique of spy baiting today and how to do it, where to get started, and honestly how to catch some really shy fish on hard baits when they are wanting something that's finesse. So let's get right into today's video. Okay, so a little background story about the original spinbait by Duo Realis and spy baiting in general. The origins of the spybait have been loosely narrowed down to 2 time zones in 2 places, but both are in Japan. Either 2007 or 2008, either on Lake Biwa or some of the smaller lakes around Tokyo. Spy baiting kind of started to emerge out of people adding on props on different styles of baits, from swim baits to, jerk baits. And so Duo Realis saw this surge and they wanted to create an official prop bait that would swim, exactly what people were looking for. And well, introducing the Duo Realis Spinbait, and this is the 80. Now, this bait has some incredible features to it that makes this bait very, very unique. The Spinbait 80 is 80 millimeters long and it weighs 3/8 of an ounce. So it's a fairly light bait. As you guys can see, it kind of resembles a body of, let's say, like a jerk bait or so. But obviously without the bill, it has 2 props on the bait, one up in the front and then one in the back. Now with these 2 props, when in the water you're pulling it through, they create a audible pitching noise, and you guys can hear it now. And that noise that you guys are hearing is supposed to be able to attract fish to this bait, because overall it's a fairly small bait. You're supposed to fish it in fairly clear water, and so some type of noise will definitely help get fish to locate and find this bait, which is definitely the idea of the bait. Now, if we take a look at the overall design of the bait, it's kind of thin here at the head, gets taller down this way, and then thins out again here in the back. Now, what that does, it's got a little bit taller side profile up here in the middle, and what that's going to do is when you're working it, it's going to roll. It's going to have this little side-to-side shimmy. And it seems like the Japanese, they absolutely love having their baits do a rolling action. A lot of their baits, from different swim baits to obviously the spin bait and other crankbaits and stuff like that, they will have some type of rolling action. So with the audible pitch that's coming from the blades as well as the rotation of the bait, you're going to be getting a lot of movement out of this bait. Now on top of that, the way the bait is designed as well is when it's coming through the water, and when the blades are turning, especially the one up here in the front and in the back, what it's going to do is going to create kind of like a draft that goes to the back of the bait, and it's going to leave this trail. So they call that noise that the blades are making a micro pulsing, and it's just that audible pitch that you're hearing. And then when you have that draft coming back, they call that the plum effect, and that vibration that they're doing is a minnow vibration. So there's a lot of motion going through this bait. So even though it's small, it's giving off a very wide variety of different senses that the fish can pick up. The flashing and rolling is gonna get the fish's eye attention. The plume effect is gonna work on their lateral line, and then the high pitch is gonna be for their hearing and their lateral line. So even though it's a small bait, it's able to attract fish from afar to come and eat this. And that's kind of the whole idea for the Spybait. The Spinbait 80 is a fantastic bait. When I first got into spybaiting, this was the one that I picked up and I really liked it. I had a lot of bites from a wide variety of different bodies of water, but the biggest thing when it comes down to spybait fishing with the spinbait is you need to have fairly clean water. Now, it is vibrating, it's making a noise, but it's a very subtle action. It's nothing crazy. It's not like it's rolling like a crankbait would. The loudness isn't like you would get from like an LV500 lipless crankbait. It's a very subtle bait. It's not going to be going crazy on the water. The water needs to be clear for this bait to really shine. I'm talking anything that is 5 to 20 plus visibility, this bait's really going to shine. You can obviously try and fish it in that dirtier water, but your success will not be as good as those fishing it in cleaner water. They made the 80 size, but they also ended up making an 80 G-Fix. And now the 80 G-Fix, it's exactly the same bait, but the only difference is this bait has just a little more weight in it. So the 80 in grams is 9.4, while the G-Fix is 10.5. So it's a gram heavier, and that extra gram, all that really does for you is you're able to cast this thing farther. It sinks a lot faster than the original 80, and you're able to track this thing down in deeper water for a lot longer, while if you tried it with the 80, it might want to rise up a little bit quicker. So I say the 80 G-Fix is really made for that deeper water. So anything from that 15 down to maybe even 40 feet of water, it gets down there quick and you're able to keep it down near the bottom a lot easier than you would with just the normal 80. Both of them are still going to cast incredibly well. Just that extra little bit of weight though, you're able to get this thing just that much further than the normal one. But of course, you wouldn't want to fish this G-Fix in shallower water than 15 foot, or else it's going to get down to the bottom too fast and you're really going to end up snagging a lot of stuff down there. You'd still want to just stick with that 80. It's going to be a little bit lighter. You can fish it in shallower water and it's going to be a killer. Then after the success of the 80 and the 80 G-Fix, they ended up coming out with a bigger size, and that is the Spinbait 90. So here's the size comparison. This is the 80 and this is the 90. Obviously 80 millimeters was the 80, 90 millimeters for the 90. The 90 is 3.5 inches. It weighs half of an ounce. So it's a bit heavier, a bit longer profile, but the same thing with this bait, the same plume effect that it has, the micro pulsing and the mental vibration, the rolling, the blades turning and creating that draft behind it, as well as the body rolling. So it's the same exact thing, just in a little bit larger size. So if I'm noticing that they're feeding on a little bit larger of shad or bluegill or whatever it is, I'm gonna be picking up the 90. Overall, I like the 90 size a little bit more. It just gives off a little bit bigger of a profile than the 80. And you get some bigger bites, I feel, on the 90 than you do on the 80. But again, it's really when they're keyed in on certain size. So if you notice that they're feeding on shad that are 3 to 4 inches, I'm gonna go up to the 90. But if they're feeding on like an inch to like 2.5, 3 inch long shad, I'm gonna go back to the 80. So it's really just me trying to dial in what size shad I'm around, or bluegill or forage, and trying to match that with this bait. And again, if you go with a bigger size kind of in that clearer water, it's just gonna help those fish be able to see that bait just that much better. If you are fishing maybe dirtier water and you really need to get that flash going and a little bit bigger profile, then I would definitely recommend going with the 90 size. And then just recently, they actually ended up making a 100 size spinbait. Here's the 90 and then the 100. So it's a lot larger. It's very similar to just a normal size jerkbait now at this point, but it's still in that spinbait category. Just under 4 inches, 5/8 of an ounce. It is the largest spin bait that they make, and it's a really great size. They are feeding on that larger grade shad, talking, you know, anywhere from that 4 to 6 inch shad size. If they're on kind of that bigger gizzard shad or bigger threadfin, this is a great bait to try and fish and catch some of those much larger fish. You obviously will weed through some of like those smaller fish, and your average size fish will go up obviously with a much larger bait. If you are fishing for pretty big bite on a clear body of water, the 100 can be a great size. Now obviously everybody knows, you know, fish a crankbait, fish a jerkbait, stuff like that, but when you have a bait like this, it's completely different than a jerkbait or a crankbait. It's a very subtle bait still, even though it's this size. So if everybody's fishing, you know, a hard-hitting crankbait or a lipless crankbait that's super loud and it's just moving a lot of water, going crazy, try a larger spin bait for a little bit bigger of a bite, especially out if you're fishing, you know, a bigger body of water that's known for big fish. Try a larger spin bait. You might surprise yourself and get some really big bites doing this way. Even more recently, Duo Realis, they just came out with a Spinbait Alpha 62 and 72. So it's a completely different profile than your normal spinbait that they came out with. And honestly, I like this profile a lot. The 62 Alpha is 2.5 inches long, but it still weighs quite a lot. It's actually 3/8 of an ounce. Same as the longer, skinnier Spinbait 80. If you compare the Alpha to the normal Spinbait, as you can see, it's shorter, but it's taller. And what that tallness is gonna do is where that regular Spinbait had a little bit of that roll, this is gonna have an even wider flash going through the water. So this really matches that smaller shad. You can work it a little bit faster as well, and it's gonna maintain that true swim to it. It's gonna still swim straight. It still has that plumb effect as well. The pulsing is gonna be the same. It's gonna roll a lot harder now, and it's gonna key in on some of that smaller shad that you're working. It's a cool, awesome little bait. It's honestly becoming one of my favorite spy baits right now on the market, just because I love the size of it. The 72 is just under 3 inches long, and it weighs 1/2 an ounce. It's even got a taller profile. So again, it's gonna have a same rolling action as the 62, just in a little bit larger size. It's got a lot of weight, so you can fish this down in good depths, and you can fish it faster, and it's still gonna get that same action. It's just the profile of it is gonna be more on par with like an actual shad, where it's got a tall profile and then it kind of thins out in the back. So if you're fishing for fish that are super keyed in, super, you know, hard to catch, and those places that are super clear water, but they are feeding on shad, and they kind of just don't like the profile of like a jerkbait or, you know, a regular spin bait, going with something that matches it even better is honestly the way to go. So when it comes down to spybait fishing, the way that I do it is I like to fish, again, that clear water. Anything from 5-foot visibility and up to 30 foot. I mean, we have a lake here called Lake Pleasant. It can be over 20-foot visibility. It's one of my favorite lakes to go out and spybait fish. And with that lake, and how I normally just like to spybait fish, is I'll throw it out in a spot that I know will have fish. So let's just say I'm fishing a point and it's got some trees, and the point comes out, the trees are sitting in like 40 feet of water, the tops of them come up to 20 feet or so. What I'm doing is I'm firing it out there, I'm counting down the bait, and this is very important to understand when it comes down to spy baits, especially the Duo Realis ones, is notice how long it takes to get down to a certain depth and calculate, okay, it gets down in 15 feet of water in so and so seconds, or it gets down to 30 feet in so and so seconds. Figuring that out so you can be very accurate on where you're casting it is going to help you in the long run, because If you're just casting it out there, you're not really paying attention, sometimes your bait will just literally land in a tree, a bush, or a rock or something, and you go to wind it in and it's already snagged. So being able to count down the bait relatively close to the bottom without hitting the bottom is one of the most important things when it comes down to spybait fishing. So what I'm doing, back to that example, is if the trees are in 40, tops are, you know, just at 20 foot, I'm firing it out there and I'm making a long cast in this clear water. The longer the cast you can make, the better your chances are of actually hooking these fish. I'm counting the bait down to where I'm like, okay, it's going. It's probably in like 15 foot now. I'm gonna start my retrieve. So then I'm gonna start my retrieve. And then you'll start to work it. You work it nice and slow. It's nothing like burning it. It's just a very slow, steady retrieve. And the bait's doing pretty much all of the work. It's flashing, it's creating that pulsing action. The audible pitch is going on, the draft behind the bait's going, and it's doing this, and it works great at a slower to medium retrieve. And all you're doing is just winding it in, and the fish, they're so attracted to the bait that they're just gonna come up and eat it. So it kind of sounds crazy because you're not bumping into any cover or anything like that. You're not really imparting a lot of action. The fish are just biting it, and that's just how good this bait works, that you don't have to jerk it like a jerk bait, or you don't need to run it into trees or rocks like a crankbait. Cast it out near the structure and just wind it in. Every now and then, what will happen in that clear water, sometimes I'll make my cast and I can see like 20 feet down or so, I'm working in my bait, I can see my bait, it comes visible, and I can see like 1 or 2 fish following it. What that means is that they want to eat the bait, they just need more of an incentive. So sometimes what I will do is, if I notice that, oh, today they're really following the bait, I fire out the bait, and every so often in your head you can count to a certain number, but I'm working the bait, and what I do is just like a little pop of the wrist, and what the bait's gonna do is go just like that. That's it. It's just a very just short little hop, and that little pop that I'm doing triggers a lot of bites, believe it or not. It's kind of just the fish is tailing it, and then the bait fish, what you're trying to make it seem like to do is the bait fish is kind of cruising along, and then the bait fish notices that something's following it, right? And obviously a real bait fish, if it knows it's being followed, it's gonna book it, it's gonna take off, it's not gonna just go the same speed. So what that does is, when the bass comes up behind the bait and you're following it and you gotta give it that little jerk, it clicks in the fish's mind like, oh crap, my cover's been blown, I've got to eat this thing right now. And boom, they eat it right away. So that's what I do. If you guys are getting followers on the spybait, it's a great way to get those followers into biters without having to stress about it all day. Once you kind of dial it in, it's one of the most fun bites I've ever gotten on ever. Now, my spinning rod choice, it just depends on which spybait I am fishing, or I'm going to be fishing the most. Now, if you guys really just like the 80 size, a rod that I would recommend is a rod that's like a medium light. Like the highest I'd go is maybe like a medium, but a medium light will be perfect. I like a bit longer of a rod if I can get it, just so I can make those really long casts. I don't really like having a shorter, 6'6" or 6'9" rod, just because I don't get that extra distance that I feel like I need to get some of those bites. So here's just like an example rod that I would pick up. This is the Megabass P5, the baby plug-in. It's a 7'2". It's a medium action rod. It's got bend kind of down here in the middle of the rod, all the way up until the tip, and the tip's, fairly whippy. So it's able to really whip out that smaller spin bait extremely well. It's got the right length. That 7'2" is gonna get your bait out there just perfectly fine, and it's a great rod for spy baiting overall. If you guys want something that's not as expensive but you still want a really good rod, the Megabass Levante Whipsnake. It's a 6'11". It's just a little bit on the shorter side for what I like, but this rod is just right. It kind of has that same action where it's got a little bit of bend in the middle, and then once you get down to the tip, it's very whippy. So it's practically the same thing as this baby plugin just in a Levante rod. You get this rod for, you know, half the price, very stylish. You're gonna lose 3 inches, but I still think it's a good rod for that 80 size spin bait. It's got the right bend, the right load, and you're gonna love this rod for spy baiting. Now for the heavier baits like the 90 or the 72 Alpha, a bit heavier, stiffer rod's gonna be better, but you still again want that tip to be able to whip out that bait. So this is just so happens to be a Megabass Levante. This is the Enforcer. It's a great length. That's 7'4". It is honestly one of the more perfect lengths for that spy baiting, just so you can really get that spy bait as far as you possibly can. I really like this rod. It honestly might become one of my new spy bait rods, just because it's got the right length. It loads those heavier spy baits if you're into that 90 or that 72 Alpha. It throws those baits amazingly. So this Levante, it's a great price again for a great rod if you're into those bigger spy baits. Now what a lot of guys have actually been doing as well, if you want to, is to use a bait caster. If you got yourself kind of dialed in, they make some incredible spybait rods. So this just so happens to be the Finesse P5 Megabass rod. It's a 6'10", so it's a little bit shorter, but it's got the right bend throughout the middle of the blank, and it's got that nice tip down here that will load that bait on the cast, but it's still kind of parabolic for those treble hooks, so you're not ripping out the hooks from the fish. 6'10" is just fine for it because it's a little bit heavier bait. You're still going to be able to get a really good cast out of the bait. It loads perfectly great for, you know, the same thing the 90, the 72 Alpha is. But if you want a bait caster, this is the kind of rod that I would go with. If you want something for like the 100 size, maybe even the 72 Alphas and the 90, this is the Megabass P5 Z Crank L-Zile. It's a crankbait rod, so it's got a lot of load into it, right? And then it's got a really nice tip here at the end of the rod as well to be able to throw those little bit heavier baits as well. It's got a little more backbone than some of the other ones, so you can fish, you know, those heavier baits on it. You can throw the 100 on it even, and it's going to do just fine. Again, another great rod, but something similar to this rod is going to do really great for those bigger spy baits as well. Now the reels that I'm putting on these rods, like the spinning reels I'm looking at, is like a 2,000 to 2,500 size reel. For the spinning, you can go with, maybe if you're going to be throwing it like those bigger spy baits like the 90 or the 100, you can jump up to even like a 3,000 size reel. Any reel will do just fine. Now for the bait casters, you want something a little bit on the slower side, anything from that 5 to 1 to like 6'4" to 1, anything between there, because again, you're going to be working the bait slow. If you're using like a 7 to 1 or even like an 8 to 1, you're going to be working it a little bit too fast. It might want to rise up a little faster than what you would want it to. The line that you can go with for on the bait casting, I would probably go anywhere from the 8 pound and like max is 10 pound for like the 100 spin bait. Now for like the 90, the 72 Alphas, 8 pound fluorocarbon is going to be perfect for those baits. You don't want anything too heavy that's going to hinder the action of the bait. Normally the lighter the line you can get away with, the better the bait is going to actually swim. So 8 pounds like the max that I will always go. And then for like the 90 and 80, if you're just going to have like one spy bait rod and you want to fish like the 80 and the 90 and, you know, the 62 and the 72, I'd probably just go with 7 pound fluorocarbon. It's going to be just perfect. It's going to be right in between because I like to fish the 80 sometimes on 6 pound. I think I get a lot of great action out of it on the 6 pound. But if you're just gonna have one and you kind of want to do all of it, I just go with the 7 pound fluorocarbon. Obviously on your spinning reels you can do the braid to a fluorocarbon leader. Just make sure that it's long enough and you'll be just fine that way as well. So that's the Duo Realis Spinbait. I absolutely love spybait fishing. Some of my friends have got me onto it and I'm a true believer in the bait. I think it excels in clear water finesse lakes, kind of like the lake we have here, Lake Pleasant. A lot of my bites come from that lake. So if you guys fish clear water, you like finesse, but you like to kind of power fish it as well, try the Spinbait series. You're gonna absolutely love them. Once you dial it in, you're gonna be surprised that these little baits can actually get some really, really big bites. And it doesn't even need to be from a lake. I've taken like that Spinbait 80 to some of my local ponds, and even those pond fish will eat it. So it's not just a lake bait, but it excels obviously on a bigger body of water where you know exactly where those fish are staging and sitting. You can get a bait out to them. The Spinbait is a fantastic bait overall. Thank you guys so much for watching. As always, please subscribe to the channel. We would really appreciate it. If you guys have any other questions about Spybait, leave a comment down below and I will try to get to them. But other than that, thank you guys so much for watching. Peace out.